I think that this sort of mindful approach to time management will allow for you to just have more productive, but also way more intentional days, weeks, months, etc. That's what this all comes down to, is intention. Instead of letting your schedule run you, you have more power than you realize you do. You can take things off your plate. You can add in things that matter to you, and you can shift how you're spending your time. All right, this video is gonna be a little bit of a disruption to your current system of existence, and I'm sorry. I have been inspired to speak about this subject from so many different sources. I've recently been listening to the audiobook of The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. Some of the concepts in the beginning of the book definitely helped inspire this. I've also been reading 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals by Oliver Burkeman and consuming content around this subject, and it's just really gotten me thinking about what it is to use time well and how can we kind of remedy this feeling of never having enough time. Most people have things that they wished they did more or they wish was a bigger priority of their life. And when asked why they are not prioritizing that thing or why they don't do it as much as they want to, they will frequently answer with the phrase, "I just don't have enough time." Being busy has become a personality. I would say as a culture in general, there's a reason why you'll hear it coming out of almost everyone's mouth that they are so busy and there's never enough time in the day and the days are just flying by without any sense of control or sense of purpose around how you're spending time. We want to spend our time on things that are of value to us. We want to spend it in the ways that give us meaning, fulfillment, help us move our lives forward. Yet there's this constant feeling of wishing for more hours in the day because it feels like there's just no time left. In this video, I'm going to propose a 4-step, 4-phase, if you will, process for kind of reclaiming your time and eliminating this feeling of never having the time for the things that you want to do. Some of the steps are going to be a little bit brutal. You're going to have to be very honest with yourself and just kind of get real about why are you spending time the way that you are? How are you being inefficient or just not smart about the ways you're spending time? Because guaranteed you're wasting a shit ton of time in your day on things that you would not consider to be high value, helping you reach your goals, or even just fulfilling you as a human being. Part of the reason why a lot of us feel overwhelmed is just a lack of clarity on priorities, where we do feel like we have to be giving time and energy to every single possible avenue. There's a million ways to spend time, and it can be extremely overwhelming, but if you follow some of the tips in this video, I think you can just give yourself peace. Peace and understanding and clarity around what you want to focus on and how to make sure that those things are a priority in your day-to-day life. Now, quick disclaimer, because I can hear the comments from here, okay? I am well aware that different people have different levels of free time. If you have kids, if you have a dog, if you have like other responsibilities, your amount of free time and flexibility is different than mine. Your level of obligations is different than mine. But I also think that these tips can be helpful regardless. I think that there are perspective shifts that you can make to at least curb those feelings of overwhelm and anxiety that sometimes come with feeling like there's not enough time. I encourage you not to close yourself off from this concept just because you've attached yourself to this idea of being someone who's very busy or has no free time. Yes, this advice is going to be applicable to different extents for different people, but I still think it can be helpful. Even if you are extremely busy, I encourage you to reflect on the things or the areas where you might be putting time and not getting as much value from it. And without further ado, let's get into the steps, the game plan that I propose if you are constantly struggling with this feeling of never having enough time. Phase 1. Acceptance. This is something that absolutely the books that I mentioned have helped me kind of wrap my head around. You need to accept that you cannot do everything, that you cannot kill it in every single avenue at the same time. It is fucking impossible. Something has to give, and you need to accept this and give yourself grace and peace with the fact that you are not going to be killing it in every aspect of your life at all times. A great example of this that I heard from Ali Abdaal, who is a creator I'll be mentioning a few times because he's one of the main influences that I feel like taught me about this thing that we're discussing. Something he said is that he gets so many emails, so many texts, so many random messages on random social platforms, and at a certain point he had to accept accept, hey, this is kind of a low value activity to me. I don't get that much from responding to messages on my phone. It's taking up more of my time than it's worth. I'm going to just own the fact that I'm someone who's bad at replying to messages. Another one that really comes to mind that I think gets people is keeping your email inbox perfectly cleared out. Listen, I get that certain like organization and keeping things clear and neat can be satisfying, but how much value are you really getting from spending time making sure you delete and categorize every single email you get only to never look at those things again? Is the value worth the time investment, or is that something that you can let go and accept that you're not going to get to and you're not going to be great at? If you're starting a business and a lot of your time is going into working on that business and creating something from the ground up, this era of your life might not be the time where you're staying really on top of chores and your apartment might not be pristine 24/7. You might not be the best at responding to text messages, and maybe your hair is a little messy 4 out of 5 days. Instead of beating yourself up like, I went to work, I spent 6 hours on the side hustle, but oh my god, I didn't get to vacuuming the floor, like I'm so unput together, I'm such a mess right now. Stop. Acknowledge the fact that you spent 6 hours working on building something incredible for yourself, and that it's okay if other parts of your life are falling off at the moment because there are other priorities. A way that this has also shown up in my life is being okay with having sort of small, menial, unimportant tasks stay on my to-do list for a long time. Not guilting myself or feeling any sort of shame or judgment towards myself because I haven't gotten to return that one Amazon purchase and it's been on my back burner to-do list for a week. Am I gonna get that much freaking value from returning that Amazon purchase? No. No, I'm not. The world will not end if it takes me a little longer to get to that thing. It's not making me money. It's not helping me feel more fulfilled in life. It's not high value, right? And giving myself the peace to push those tasks aside for as long as I possibly can has honestly been really freeing because, again, those menial, tiny, silly chore type tasks can fill up an entire freaking day, an entire freaking week if you let them. They can consume you. They can dominate your schedule. Or you could decide, hey, you're not that important to me right now. I'm gonna let you exist over there and I'll get to you eventually because I kind of have to, but you can bet your ass that I'm not gonna be prioritizing you and I'm not gonna feel shitty about the fact that I cannot simultaneously keep up with these silly random tasks that I need to do and do this huge, important, creative project that I really want to do. Obviously, that project takes priority and I'm okay with slacking on this other area of my life. Because I acknowledge the reality that something has to give, it's very important to identify what you want to put off, neglect, etc. in this phase of life and what you don't. And that brings us to phase 2, which is prioritization. Arguably the most important phase and something that I personally have always really struggled with. My brain does not prioritize naturally, and I actually think that this is the case for a lot of us. I remember like back in college, I would have a huge project to work on and I would suddenly have this idea that deep cleaning my entire apartment was the priority. And I would even have people around me being like, you're not very good at prioritization. And it's not something that really comes naturally necessarily. A lot of times we will take the easy way out and prioritize the things that are easiest and maybe not the most valuable to us. Because we have accepted that we cannot do everything, I want you to take those things that you don't have the time for but really want to do and push them to the top of your priority list. You're going to scrape together the time to do those things. You're going to kick out those low value tasks, whether it is, random chores that you can realistically get to the next day, or maybe you're in some club that you honestly don't really love and you don't really get much from that you can just quit, or you're in the PTA association and you kind of fucking hate it with all of your guts. Find the things in your life where you're not getting that high return, that high value that you can, even temporarily, kick to the curb in order to bring those things that you really want to be spending time on to the top of your priority list. And something that I think is extremely important here is being honest with yourself about what is and is not a priority, and understanding that there is a difference between what sounds cool or interesting in theory and what you're actually going to enjoy and feel passion towards and get value from pursuing on a day-to-day basis. I think there's two classes of people who often say the, oh, I just don't have the time excuse. There's one class of people who have not taken the time to accept and prioritize and do these steps. They do really want to pursue that thing, but they're not clearing the space for it in their lives. And then there's the group of people that think that they want to do the thing, but don't actually have the passion, the motivation, the interest in that thing to warrant them actually going through the efforts, the process, etc., to learn and or pursue that. There are a million fucking hobbies that I'm sure sound vaguely interesting, or that you think, maybe I'd want to try that. That sounds kind of fun. If you pursued every single one of those things, if you pursued anything that was vaguely interesting, you would drive yourself crazy. You would completely fall over like a dead fucking fish, because we just do not have the capacity. It goes back to that accepting that we don't have the time to do everything. If you are someone who struggles with a lot of FOMO and feels this need and this obligation to try out like every instrument, every hobby, every art form, you will literally drive yourself nuts, and you'll be unnecessarily torturing yourself, being like, I said I wanted to learn Spanish, but I'm not practicing. Like, I said I wanted to learn guitar, but I'm not sticking with it. Like, why do I suck? Why do I not have the willpower? If it's something you want to do, if it's a passion and interest, and it feels like that much of a chore, you don't really want it that bad. You don't have the motivation, the interest to back up that slight curiosity. And this is something that I also learned from Ali Abdaal that initially I felt a little bit of resistance to, but the more I thought about it, the more I was like, oh my God, this is so true. This is so real. He was talking about this example where he had signed up for art classes because he thought it'd be fun. He had an interest in getting better at art, and it was something he wanted to do for himself as like a side passion and a recreational activity. He signed up for these art classes, and then he noticed that every time an art class was coming up, he was feeling a little bit of resistance. He didn't really want to go. He was praying to God that it would get canceled. He realized that these classes he thought he wanted were feeling a lot more like a chore and something that he wished he could get out of. It had become more an obligation that he had imposed on himself than something he actually wanted to do. And so instead of continuously torturing himself with this, he decided just to quit the art classes. Now, from an outside perspective, quitting has this connotation of like, oh, this person's lazy, they didn't have the motivation for it. But I think that there's no shame in realizing that something you might have thought you were interested in, or that was interesting to you maybe a year ago, no longer is getting you passionate, no longer excites you, and that your time would be better spent elsewhere. I have dropped so many potential hobbies and interests over the years, and I just think that that was necessary, because if I was still trying to learn how to play the guitar, you know, I have a guitar sitting on my wall that I haven't played, I could torture myself about that and be like, you really need to start picking up that guitar again. But I wouldn't have the space for my current priorities if I clung to that past the point where it was exciting me and I was naturally motivated to want to learn the guitar, right? That's not where my passion is right now. And if I was still forcing myself to do an hour of guitar practice every day, that's time that I'm taking away from the things that are actually exciting me, potentially bringing me rewards and adding to my life, helping me build something for myself. Get real with yourself about which camp you're in. If there's something that you've always wanted to try or pursue, you might not know right away. You might need to try it out to really see, but there is so many obligations in our lives. There's so many things that we kind of have to do that we don't want to do, you know, things like taxes, maybe work. Like, we already have to deal with obligations. Your passions, your dreams, the hobbies you want to pursue, the things that you want to bring onto your plate should not feel like that same heavy obligation. It should be something that you are naturally drawn to and wanting to dedicate time to. And you need to be honest with yourself. Are you naturally being pulled to want to do those things? Or is it more something that you're like, yeah, it seems cool to be that type of person, to be someone who can play the guitar? Because thinking it's cool to be someone who plays the guitar is not going to give you enough motivation and drive to want to show up to that instrument every day and work on the skill. So I think a huge way you can bring yourself peace and freedom and more sense of time freedom is, first of all, looking at everything in your current life and genuinely asking yourself if this is something that's voluntary, you know, not an obligation that I have to do. Am I really getting enough from it? Does it feel like a chore, or does it genuinely fill up my cup? Be really real with yourself about that, and know that you're not getting a badge for doing a million fucking things. If something is not serving you, there is no shame and no loss from cutting that thing off. It doesn't have to be permanent. Just be honest with yourself about what are your real personal priorities, what matters to you the most in your life, what's actually going to help you get towards the life that you want. For me, one of the top priorities in my life right now is YouTube. I've had to accept that there are going to be sacrifices to carve out the time to do this thing that is very time consuming and that may not have been built into the way that I was living my life before I had this thing that I was doing. But I can rest easy knowing that I've identified this as a priority, that this is an active, cognizant choice that I've made, and that I can always pivot in the future if this no longer remains the thing that I want to go hardest at. But in the meantime, I have have the piece of like, I've chosen to prioritize YouTube. If these other things fall by the wayside, it's because of the active choice I've made about how I'm spending my time now. That is such a better feeling than that out of control sort of fumbling, trying to keep it all together, of trying to keep every single aspect of your life, every hobby, every pursuit, everything that you participate in at 100% best you, giving maximum effort, and then failing inevitably to do that because you don't have the capacity. It's a lot better if you go into it with the mindset of like, I'm choosing to prioritize this, this, and this. As a result, other things are going to fall by the wayside, but I'm going to give myself grace. I understand that this is a necessary thing in order for me to actively prioritize these top high value, like actually going to do something for me or fulfill me sort of things. Now we get into phase 3, which is theming. And this is the phase that I feel like I really need to work on. There is no easier way to feel overwhelmed than to be jumping from task to task to task. Focused time working on a specific thing is your best friend. The days that I feel the most stressed out, overwhelmed, unproductive, and just kind of confused are the days where I do not set up any sort of strict boundaries, and instead I'm jumping from task to task to task. You know, I start out the day by checking my YouTube analytics, then my brain's in YouTube mode. Then I try to like clean up the apartment a little bit, suddenly my brain's in cleaning organization mode. Then I have to go do work for my 9 to 5, so my brain's in work mode, but all of a sudden I notice that the laundry needs to be done, so I'm gonna take the laundry down, and oh my god, this dish really needs to be cleaned, but I need to answer this message. It is a mind fuck. It is a mind fuck, and something I'm working on doing now is setting those boundaries and theming my freaking days, not just my days, but my chunks of time, so that I stop running around and feeling so stretched thin. Let's say, for example, that the thing that you really have always wanted to prioritize is writing a book. Let's say that writing a book has been your dream for 10 freaking years, but you've always felt like you don't have the time. You've decided that this is your top-notch priority. If you vaguely have the idea that you're going to start working on this book, but you don't have any sort of clear idea about like a dedicated writing time, you might drive yourself crazy trying to work on that book in between every other little thing that you have to do. If you start that book project, but then suddenly you're noticing your bed needs to be made, or you really have to respond to that text message that you completely forgot about, other tasks start popping up in your head and you're fulfilling them as they pop up, you're not going to get any real dedicated work done, and you're not going to feel like you made any meaningful progress. So what you need to do as often as possible is segment your time so that you have, even if it's a short chunk of time, even if it's only half an hour that you can squeeze in, you have that dedicated time chunk of like, this is book writing time and nothing else is going to disturb that piece. If I notice another task that needs to get done, I'll write it down on my to-do list, but I will not get up to go do that thing. This is so valuable. You might need to take yourself out of your typical environment to create that tranquility, that sanctity of space, if you will. If it means taking yourself to a coffee shop with the intention of, this is my time to work on my book, this is my time to work on my side hustle, whatever it is, do that. Do that and build it into your schedule and have clarity about what that time is for, and don't allow that time to become about anything else. This doesn't just apply to your big passion projects. I honestly think that you should be applying this to everything. Just because a task comes into your brain does not mean it needs immediate fulfillment, and you'll feel a lot more calm and chill and like you're actually doing things with intention and doing things well if you make that decision to have dedicated time throughout your day. If you do have several things in your life you're trying to balance, for example, starting a YouTube channel, working on a podcast, and starting a freelance business, I mean, that's a lot to have on your plate. And if you have all that, I encourage you to do some reflection, make sure it's all essential. But if it is, if you're really passionate about all 3 of those things, theme your freaking days. If you want to work on these projects and side hustles after work, decide Monday is my podcast day, Tuesday and Wednesday are my YouTube days, I'm filming on Tuesday, editing on Wednesday, Thursday I'm working on my freelancing business. And when those times come around, when it's the evening, you are not freaking working on anything that's not assigned to that day. I want to start applying this more to my own life, because when you don't have this sort of structure in place, you're going to constantly suffer from the feeling, I could be doing more, I should be working on this, this, and this. Any spare moment I have, I'm working towards this side hustle. Spare yourself that, because if you stay on that train, you're never going to find balance in your life. Instead, set strict boundaries for when you're working on certain things. Maybe Saturday afternoons you work on your YouTube channel, but you preserve your morning to read a book, walk, go for coffee, clean your apartment. Like, create these sectioned time chunks. This will help you not feel so overwhelmed because you're not going to constantly be spinning your wheels about what could I be working on? I should be doing this. I should be doing that. Instead, you have specific hours where you're meant to be working on this thing, and you can give yourself freedom from it at all other times of day. And that is a freeing fucking feeling. And now we get to step 4, which is flow. And I kind of talked about this a little bit with, having dedicated time, but what doing all of these steps allows for you is very concentrated, high value flow state work. And this is the zone of genius. This is the place that you want to get to as often as possible. When you've accepted that you can't do everything, you have that freedom, you have relieved yourself from that pressure, you've decided on a key priority, you've dedicated a specific themed time to it. All of those things are the necessary conditions to get into flow state. Your mind is clear and free. You have no sense of pressure or conflicting priorities. You know that this is the time to work on this thing. Now you can really just let yourself be submerged in it and get into deep work, hours of just focused energy towards the things that you care about and that you want to be working on. And I think that this sort of mindful approach to time management will allow for you to just have more productive, but also way more intentional days, weeks, months, etc. That's what this all comes down to, is intention. Instead of letting your schedule run you have more power than you realize you do. You can take things off your plate. You can add in things that matter to you, and you can shift how you're spending your time. All of these phases are great, but they will do nothing for you if you don't have the honesty and the self-awareness to get real with yourself about the ways that you're wasting time, the ways you really want to be spending your time, and what is actually required from you to bridge that gap. This is a little bit of tough love. Like, you cannot be complaining that you don't have the time to write your novel when you're spending 4 hours a day scrolling on TikTok. I'm sorry, I don't feel bad for you. We all need a little bit of frivolous fun. We all need some mind-numbing activities, right? But you have, 16 waking hours in the day, and yeah, you might have to work for 8 of those, but don't neglect the rest of the time that you do have. Be really transparent and honest with yourself about how you're spending that time and the ways that you can change that strategy, because at the end of the day, it is in your control. And if it feels like it's not, it's because you're sleepwalking. You're not putting intentionality behind your actions. And intentionality is the key to changing your life, the key to actually going after your goals, the key to like everything, okay? If you're not being intentional, you are letting your obligations, other people, etc. run your life, run your time. Your time is yours. It's your greatest resource, greatest asset. Use it frickin' well. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it was valuable. In a few days, I'll be back here with my March monthly reset, so stay tuned for that. And if you're new to the channel, hi, my name is Brielle. I make all sorts of post-grad lifestyle, personal development, and productivity content. If you like this video, you'll probably like more of mine. I have an entire self-improvement playlist on my channel with videos just like this, so be sure to check those videos out. Also, make sure you like and subscribe while you're at it. I love you guys so much. All right, bye guys.
Yeah, his baby said that they don't got a future like it burns. So give him something worse to kill his head with, make him forget somehow. Might be that another day she would have wished he stayed, but they're done.